So today, instead of talking about the wearing of the greens, we will be talking about the eating of the greens. Now that's because March is also National Nutrition Month. And at Thoreau, we care not only about your mind, heart, and spirit, but also your body. Now, for our visitors, we do have visitors. I should explain that today is the third Sunday. That means our Sunday service is replaced by a program presented by Thoreau's Adult Discussion Group, which we call ADG. Other Sundays, ADGs meet at 9:45 in the cabin right over there, and dismissed by 10:45, so you have plenty of time to come back to this building, grab some coffee, maybe a donut, and come in here for the service experience. Our ADG topics vary widely, but our format is the same, whether here or in the cabin. Our moderator, Tamara Benarusso, will now explain that format and introduce our most esteemed speaker.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
It seems like Karen has pretty much well informed you, but I'll let you know a little bit more since we do have visitors. Wow, that really is working. When, after the presentation, we open it for Q&A, questions and answers and discussion, and because we have a lot of people here today, and we have our Unitarians are known for their gift of gab, we hold the time to 2 minutes. So I'm not being rude when I cut you off. We'll go like this. And then the presenter will have time to answer, and the presenter is not timed. So understand that, and again, we're not being rude. And if it's off topic, we go like this. And that means you have to get back on the topic of the presentation, otherwise we never learn anything more about what we're presenting. So today we are very happy to have Dr. Michael Crouch talk about the crazy new food pyramid that was thought up by equally crazy, I think. That's my personal opinion. With that, take it off. I'm gonna take it away.
Take it off. Hey, wait a minute.
Okay, we're going to talk about what I'm referring to as the less than great food pyramid. The great pyramid is on the upper right there. This pyramid is not as great and won't last as long. Okay, I'm talking about the pros and cons of this new inverted food pyramid from the standpoint of nutritional science, food economics, and agribusiness, and then areas of scientific consensus and controversy or uncertainty about the healthiest dietary patterns for adults. So after being in this session, hopefully you'll be able to identify strategies for maximizing the benefit and minimizing the harm of the food and beverages you consume and the supplements that you ingest, and to identify specific changes you might want to make in how you eat on a long-term basis. I got interested in nutrition my first year in medical school. We had a course in nutrition. It wasn't very good. It was focusing on rare nutrition diseases like beriberi and rickets and pellagra that you never see in contemporary United States. So I got together with a couple of classmates and we put together a practical nutrition course that talked about pregnant women and weight loss and cholesterol reduction and diabetes, the things that doctors really need to know to advise patients about how to eat healthily. And that was a lot of fun. And then during my residency, we had both a nutritionist and a dietitian on our faculty. I worked closely with them to learn more about nutrition and to get better counseling patients about it. I've kept up with the nutrition literature over the years of my practice, and especially fad diets, which come and go. Like if you go to a bookstore or your local drugstore or any place there's magazines and books, there's always lots and lots about the new fad diets. Oops, wait a minute. I didn't mean to do that. Okay. So, in general, if you want to eat healthily, you need to have enough protein in your diet, enough carbohydrate and fat for energy, vitamins for metabolic needs, minerals for metabolic needs, and essential fatty acids for making hormones. That's the basic nutritional intake that everybody needs to live well long term. And you need to eat the right proportion of food groups to have your diet be in balance. And then moderation is important, particularly with respect to sodium and sugars and saturated fats and alcohol. And then to eat a wide variety of foods is a healthy pattern as well. In my life, I grew up eating way too much peanut butter and less of other things like vegetables, but I did okay until I finally learned to eat more vegetables. So the first dietary guidelines for Americans came out in, the new ones are in 2026. Did it again? No, I didn't, okay. So this new thing is an inverted pyramid. I think it's appropriate that the new pyramid is upside down from the other pyramid because everything else is upside down lately. So it's kind of appropriate in a way. The new guidelines replaced every 5 years. So they started in 1980, the year I finished my family practice residency program. And the first version emphasized a variety of foods. It was criticized as being too vague and having no food images to help people in picking out foods. So in 1985, they updated it to focus more on maintaining a desirable weight rather than ideal weight, and to emphasize starches and fiber as the bulk of your calorie input. And then they put together a scientific panel, advisory committee for the first time to try to make the guidelines evidence-based. And then they reaffirmed the need for moderating alcohol intake. So the 7 guidelines remained in 1985. Same thing we talked about. 1990, they basically changed from avoid foods to pick healthy foods. It's more positive wording. And they for the first time limited amount of saturated fat to 10% and the total fat to 30% of calories. And moderation was emphasized. 7 guidelines were basically the same in 1990. They basically said it's not what you eat in a particular meal that's important, it's what your overall dietary pattern is over the weeks and months of your life and years of your life. And they clarified that you don't need to worry about fat in children under 2. They need more fat for brain growth. So the guidelines, the pyramid first appeared in 1992, 2 years after the 1990 revision, and it had at the bottom grains, starches as the base of your calorie input, and then fruits and vegetables, dairy and protein on top of that, and at the very top, and the least amount in your diet should be fats, oils, and sweets. It was criticized for having excessive starch intake, perhaps, and not being specific enough about which kinds of grains were healthier, and fats and oils. In 1995, weight management was stressed even more than it had been previously, and then the emphasis was on the whole diet as opposed to particular nutrients, and it included the pyramid that had been formed in 1992 to emphasize that. This was the first time that there had been an act that was passed that required the USDA and Health and Human Services to update the guidelines every 5 years and to use scientific evidence in the process of doing that. In 2000, they shifted to 10 guidelines, had a larger booklet that was easier to read, and emphasized food safety and physical activity for the first time, and weight management was even more strongly emphasized. So you can see a pattern here. The recommendations don't change very much really so far, except for some of the details. The 10 guidelines include food safety, limiting sugar intake. The current guidelines are saying, oh, we declare war on sugar. Well, we've been declaring war on sugar for 45 years now. So it's not new. Some of the stuff they tout as being new isn't new at all. And some of the stuff they tout as new is wrong. So we'll come to that. In 2005, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but the details included adding potassium for heart healthiness with high blood pressure, and they replaced the pyramid with 12 different calorie eating levels, which was too complicated and people never paid much attention to that, so that didn't last long. And then they came out with the My Plate which is even bigger failure because it was oversimplified. It didn't talk about healthy versus unhealthy foods. It didn't talk about portion sizes. It didn't talk about ethnic variety. So my plate died pretty quickly. It was just an attempt to make things simplified, but it made it oversimplified. In 2015, there were no real significant changes, really. They emphasized whole fruits as opposed to fruit juices, and encouraging diverse vegetables, and they eliminated the cholesterol limit because it found that saturated fat was a lot more important than cholesterol per se, as far as cholesterol level was concerned. So in 2020, they, for the first time, they included life stage recommendations for children, pregnant women, and older adults. And then they emphasized the no added sugar for kids under 2 especially, and re-emphasized limiting alcohol, and nutrient-dense foods. So again, not new in this version, it's been around for a while. So this new version was released January the 6th. It has what's been called an inverted food pyramid. And in the press conference, there were some unfortunate comments made by you-know-who. I won't talk anymore about him, but he's a moron and shouldn't be in charge of health and human services. He's a group of morons, but at least they're consistent there. He talked about ending the war on saturated fat. Okay. And eat mostly real foods. Real foods is a totally baloney expression. There's no such thing as real food and unreal food, first of all. And real foods, he cited red meat, butter, and other high-fat dairy, real food. Well, it's really good for your heart disease if you want to have heart disease. It's good for that, but okay, so in the press conference, Agriculture Secretary Rollins said, we're realigning our food system to support American farmers, ranchers, and companies that grow and produce real food. Again, macho language that really isn't science-based and doesn't mean anything, except that we're trying to cater to the food industry. So they set up a false dichotomy where ultra-processed foods are bad, by definition, in their view. And there's really no such thing as unprocessed real foods. When you get vegetables, they've been thoroughly processed before you get them. Otherwise, you'd have more hepatitis in them, and you'd have more other contaminants in the vegetables. So even fresh vegetables have to be extensively processed with antimicrobial washes and chemicals to remove the dirt, reduce the bacteria, and keep them fresh. And here's some of the details. I'm not going to go on this, but it's quite an elaborate process that they go through, which is good for food safety. Milk processing, another real food, and according to them, not highly processed, but milk, after it's collected and transported, gets tested for bacteria, filtered and clarified, and then they standardize it by centrifuging the cream out of it, and then they mix the cream back in to give you whole milk, which is 3.25% fat, or 1% fat, or leave the fat out and have skim milk. So even milk gets highly processed, and probably a good thing. Okay. Other healthy, highly processed foods include cheese, plain yogurt, frozen vegetables and fruits, canned vegetables, fruits, and fish, hummus, peanut butter, and other nut butters that don't have hydrogenated oil. They're all healthy, but they're all highly processed. So this highly processed thing being bad is just a ridiculous, false dichotomy. So here's the good, the bad, and the ugly about these new dietary guidelines. There's a lot of good in them actually, but the good was glossed over by the bad that was touted in the press conference. The good, eat the right amount for you. Good idea. Don't eat too much. Pay attention to your portion sizes. Stay well hydrated. Duh. But yeah, that's good. Instead of frying things, bake them, broil them, roast them, stir fry them, or grill them. Good advice. High quality nutrient-dense protein foods, fine. Consume meat with no added sugars or carbohydrates or chemical additives, fine. Consume a variety of proteins foods from animal sources and vegetable sources, fine as far as it goes. We'll come to the bad about that in a minute. the good, also focus on whole grains. Fine, fiber-rich whole grains, great. Whole wheat bread, brown rice, etc. Reduce your highly processed refined carbohydrates. Fine. Whole grain servings 2 to 4 a day. Fine. Limit highly processed foods that are ready to eat, sweet and salty stuff. That's good advice. The advice about limiting artificial flavors and petroleum-based dyes and artificial preservatives and low-calorie, non-nutritive sweeteners, that's in my Coke Zero, the evidence is weak, actually, scientifically, for limiting those in any arbitrary way. So you want to avoid those, fine, but you may not need to avoid those. At least there's not good evidence for staying away from those to the extent to which the current regime is trying to get you to do. Avoid sugar-sweetened beverages. That's good advice, especially the high fructose corn syrup, like regular Coke. Another good thing about it is to limit your added sugar. And when you eat select snack foods, choose healthy things that aren't sugared or salted heavily. So salt is good for hydration, but you don't need too much of it, and most Americans have still probably a little too much of it. And so they recommend limiting to a certain amount that's been the same for 50 years, basically. Less alcohol for better health. The current recommendation is 1 drink per day for men and women, not just women. Now, higher alcohol intake level is more incidence with liver disease in particular, and some other issues as well for health. The bad. Well, they demoted whole grains to the bottom of the pyramid. They have a few grains of rice sitting below the other whole grain foods on the bottom. And when you eliminate the folic acid supplemented grains like breakfast cereals and bread that's otherwise considered bad, you may wind up with serious issues with women of childbearing age having more neural tube defect babies. In the countries where they made mandatory folic acid supplementation the law, the rate of neural tube defect babies dropped over 50% in the 2 decades following that. So very effective public health measure. Just put some folic acid in your Wheaties and your Cheerios and your white bread. Neural tube defect is a very serious congenital problem with lots of health issues. So we don't want more of that. Another way that this is a problem is when you look at this new pyramid, the upside down one, the thing you see first when most people look at the upper left hand is red meat. And red meat should not be, I repeat, should not be your main source of protein. And that's, in no world does that make sense. It's good for the beef industry, but aside from that, we'll cover that in a minute. So lean meat is a good part of your, it's fine, it's a good part of your diet. Cassie and I go to Outback every 3 months or so. I have a filet mignon because I like filet mignon. But otherwise, I eat chicken and fish and nuts as my protein. They've upped the requirement. This is one of the most controversial things in the new guidelines. They've recommended to increase the daily protein intake by 50 to 100%. Now that's a big increase in protein intake. For someone my size, I'd have to eat 12 to 16 ounces of steak, 15 to 20 ounces of lean hamburger, or 9 to 12 ounces of chicken, or 11 to 15 large eggs to get that much protein. That's a lot of protein.
That's a daily?
Daily. Yeah. So this is a problem potentially. You may have a lot more silent kidney disease progressing to kidney failure if people eat this amount of protein on a regular basis. Now, you probably have trouble affording to eat this much protein on a regular basis because it would get pricey pretty quick. That's the other problem with it. So people in poor neighborhoods, there's no way they're going to be able to afford this amount of protein. Throughout history, very few human populations have eaten this amount of protein on a long-term basis, and most of them don't have long lifespans. Ancient hunter-gatherers lived about 25 to 35. Now, if you didn't die before age 15, the average was about 68 to 78 in the studies they've done of DNA of ancient hunter-gatherers. The Maasai in Africa ate mostly blood, meat, and milk products, and the average longevity was 55 to 60. So That diet didn't apparently work out well for them. The Inuit did a little better, 64 to 73 average lifestyle, eating very high amounts of protein. And then the worst example is bodybuilders, who besides eating a lot of protein in their diet, consume large amounts of protein supplement. And this has long been known to be detrimental, and the average bodybuilder lifespan is 42 to 45. The people that pump iron and look grotesquely muscular, they don't live very long. I did not know. I knew that wasn't probably very good for your health, but I was shocked to find that was, I looked in several different places, and that's apparently valid. Some ex-athletes who did protein supplementation, like NFL football players, also tend to die young. So Icelanders are the exception. They eat a lot of protein, and they live to 82 to 84. Men 82 and women 84. So this says, that's it. How many Japanese people? Oh, so I said, I really don't care how many Japanese people eat it. I just don't go in for that weird foreign food. That's an Icelander saying, eat your ethnic food and don't eat that other weird food. So, the average steak, 12 to 16 ounces of steak has 920 calories, a third of which is saturated fat. So, right away you can see that's probably not a great idea. There's no way to eat that much red meat while trying to satisfy the new protein intake without eating way too much saturated fat. So they glossed over that. Consume more dairy. They say whole milk dairy. Don't eat that. Don't consume that low fat stuff. Bad idea for adults. Too much saturated fat again. They recommend 3 servings a day. That's too much saturated fat. I am currently consuming 1 glass of milk a day and 2 scoops of ice cream in my protein shake because looked at the literature, and elderly people tend to waste, their muscles tend to waste away, and my upper body muscles did. So we were working with a trainer who strongly encouraged me to do a protein supplement, which I was not inclined to do, but then I looked at it and thought, okay. So I'm drinking a protein shake every night with 2 scoops of ice cream in it for more calcium and even a little more protein. So that's one of the things that seems to make some sense. And I'm taking a cholesterol medication to lower, to neutralize the saturated fat effect in the ice cream because that's another story entirely. There's a reason for that besides that too. I have a little hardening of the arteries, it turns out, which is annoying because I'm not supposed to have that in my view. So here's the other problem. Oh, wait, let's see. Okay, here's the ugly part. The guidelines incorporated the recommendations every time of the advisory committee. So this year they ignored the scientific advisory committee. Oops, wait a minute. They ignored the scientific advisory committee for the first time, and they're ignoring the law that says that if you don't use the scientific advisory process, you might be inappropriately influenced by appointing authority or special interests. So new guidelines ignore those, and they rely on a panel of industry insiders who were on this panel for the new food pyramid without any oversight or input by the public. Usually we have input inside from public before the guidelines come out. This year they just rolled them out in January and said, here they are. You have no chance to comment on them, except you can comment now. Some of the experts have financial ties to the beef and dairy industries. In fact, 7 of the 9 people on the panel had relations with the Beef Association, Beef Council, the Dairy Council, and the National Pork Board. So something's smelling a little rotten in Denmark here. These are the advisors and their particular ties. I won't go into details. They're kind of obvious. There's a lot of beef and dairy, that they get money from the beef and dairy industry. So the quote that I found was that the administration has been hoodwinked by scientists working for the dairy and meat industries rather than for the health of Americans. This is from the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. The biases reflected, which heavily promote meat and whole dairy, and mistakenly warn of nutritional deficiencies in vegan and vegetarian dietary patterns. So basically, it looks like they're catering to food industry companies who benefit from increased sales of their products. So RFK, I'm going to be finished short, but I need to do some more. So I've already talked about that. If we follow the guidelines, we're gonna get probably more heart attacks and strokes, and more kidney disease, and more neural tube defects. So that's the science part of it. It'd be interesting to see to what extent the public pays attention to and follows, or tries to follow, the new food guidelines. It's a mixed bag, and basically it's good stuff mixed with a few bad things that would be bad for our health. So this is my advice. I've already kind of said what I think, so I'm not going to go into detail on that. And I'll be happy to send you the whole presentation via email if you'd like to look at the details. So those are one more thing I want to talk about. Oh, there's a planetary health diet, which I was unaware of that Karen told me about. Its aim is to improve food raising efficiency and eliminate waste over the next 25 years. And because of climate change, we're going to have to pay more attention to the efficiency of food production. And then specifically, they recommend some farming practice changes that are detailed there. And then changing our diets that make them less dependent on animal protein and more based on plant protein. Very similar to the Mediterranean diet, actually. So these are six steps of planetary health diet. It's all the stuff we talked about before. Okay.
Okay, I forgot to mention that when hands are raised, I do take note of them and put you on a queue, and you will be called before, as you are listed in the queue. But visitors will get jumped over other people if they raise their hands, because we don't want them to be too strong. All right, Mary Flurkey, Ron Masters, no. I saw someone else's hand.
Yeah, so Michael, please post the.
Mary's first, but sorry.
So, I would like to get the PowerPoint, that's all.
Yeah, just email it and I'll send it to
So
you.
we could hear you, please.
We are both requesting a copy of the PowerPoint.
Got it. Just send me an email and send it to you.
Thank you.
You could
Yeah,
post.
Mary, do you have a question or comment?
I have a different.
No, wait a minute. Hang on, Mary's got the floor.
Thank you. I wondered if you could tell us, I have two questions. Can you tell us what the average life expectancy is for our US citizens now?
78 to 82 for women, 78 for men.
Okay, I have three questions, and then how does that compare? We don't have the longest life expectancy.
We do not do anywhere near the top on lifespan. We're kind of in the middle. We're above Uganda, but we're below all the Scandinavian countries, all the European countries.
Japan.
We're above South America for the most part. We're below Japan. We're below. I think we're below China too. So we're not doing that great longevity for a variety of reasons.
Yeah. Okay, and I would like to also refer to the new food pyramid. I didn't see on there where roadkill was listed.
I think they omitted mention of roadkill.
I want to be sure I didn't miss it.
Okay, Ron.
Yeah, I object to the word hoodwinked. The administration was not hoodwinked by the industry. It was paid by the industry. The only reason you would say hoodwinked would be if you were under the misconception that the administration was interested in serving the public rather than the people who would pay to play.
Yes, excellent point. Hoodwinked is inappropriate. Shill would be more appropriate. The administration is a shill for the food industry now.
Okay, no.
I have a little notebook here of several comments, but I'm just
One at a
going
time, please.
to concentrate on one, if I may continue. And that is the issue of alcohol. I am halfway through a very remarkable book by a Scottish psychiatrist, Ian McGilchrist. And in the book, he talks about the correlation between alcohol consumption and longevity. Now, I'm sure from a medical point of view, there are really, really good reasons to avoid alcohol. But from a demographic point of view, the point is that moderate drinkers live longer than teetotalers for.
Low level moderate, not high moderate. Moderate is a vague term. 1 drink a day is associated with a slight increase in mortality and longevity. Above 1 drink a day is associated with a lower longevity.
Yeah, so.
Good life insurance data on that in particular.
I guess we need to kind of quantify what it is, but it is true that moderate drinkers, however we want to define that. Anyway, I'll stop there. I'll
Okay.
pass.
Yeah, if you define moderate as 1, that's true. Above 1, it's not true. So 1 glass of wine, healthy. 3 glasses of wine, no. 2, maybe for men, but the data's a little iffy on 2 glasses of wine for men.
When you say the data, are you talking about longevity data? Or?
Longevity data, also data on the incidence of cirrhosis and chronic hepatitis and cirrhosis, which correlates strongly with longevity, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to comment, I noticed that Iceland had a long lifespan in spite of their diet. But in Iceland, they're fishermen that go out and work hard every day. They're very much outdoorsy people. My sons have done a lot of work in Iceland, and they say that everybody there is very active every day.
Yeah, the lifestyle in Iceland is very different from the average sedentary American lifestyle. So that activity contributes a lot to it. Also heavy in fish, and they have a decent amount of vegetables in their diet too. So it's a healthy, high protein diet.
And also in the Scandinavian nations, this would also be true. They're also a very active people that bicycle and hike, and the United States just tends to sit in front of their telephones and TVs.
Yeah, activity correlates more with longevity than any dietary thing does.
Yeah. So anyway, just an observation.
No.
Next point off of my notebook here. You mentioned that fat consumption is good for children because they need to grow their brains, for example. But is it not really beneficial for adults as well? The brain really is just a lot of 3 pounds of fat.
Right, but once you grow your brain, you don't need nearly as much to maintain the brain from there. So, and you don't need very much saturated fat. Fat in general, yes, you do need some for making hormones and other body metabolism components, but you don't need nearly as much fat as most Americans have historically consumed, and particularly not nearly as much saturated fat as we've consumed.
And if you had a choice between, a hypothetical choice here, between fat and carbohydrates, are you better off with fat or better off with
Carbohydrate.
Carbohydrate?
Fat has over twice as much calories per gram. So one of the problems with America is the obesity epidemic, and the high fat intake has contributed a lot to that. And so if you eat the same amount of food, weight-wise, fat has twice as many calories per gram of weight.
How about calorie-wise?
That's what I mean, calories, it's twice as many calories.
No, I mean, if you have the same amount of carbs the calorie content of the carbs you eat is equal to the calorie content of the fat you eat, which is the better choice?
You have to eat twice as much carb to have that many calories. Basically, you need to eat the calories that you need to maintain your body and at your activity level. So if you have more exercise, you need more calories for energy. If you have less exercise, you need fewer calories for energy. So you need less carb and fat in combination to maintain that, and a healthier balance is more carb than fat, but preferably whole grain carb.
The food pyramid several years ago really sort of emphasized the choice of carbs over fat.
Yeah.
And I think the evidence is that the obesity epidemic in the States is due to the consumption of carbs.
That's
the
not true,
consumption
actually.
of
It's a
fat.
combination of carbs and fat, and the added sugars correlate strongly with it, but not the complex carbs. So you have to sort of sort out that. Too much added sugar has contributed, yes, to the obesity epidemic.
Yeah.
Because partly it's sweet, people eat more of it than they do. You're not gonna eat a whole lot of whole grain products.
When I think of carbs, I think of grains, not really sugar.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Isabel.
Oh, okay, so I wanted to add to what you said about the fats. Well, it depends on which kind of fat. Like you have a whole avocado, that's fat. It's good fat, it's better than carbohydrates. So it really depends on what kind of fat are you consuming, like seeds.
Yeah, good point. If you eat more polyunsaturated fat and monounsaturated fat like olive oil, that's a good substitute. Just remember, at a given weight, you're getting twice as many calories. So if you're concerned with weight management, which we should be, then you need to be very careful with the fat because it's easier to gain weight eating fat than carb.
Yeah, well, the worst thing is the carbs.
But healthy
and
fats and
the
oils
fats.
are a good part of the diet. Yes.
Yeah, but that's it. It's like for kids, especially growing, it's like seeds. How do you say? You know, like the avocado, cheese, all that kind of fat. It's better than, in my opinion, I think it's better than carbohydrates.
Better than the simple carbohydrates, but not necessarily better than the complex,
Well, yeah, that's true.
the whole grains. But we don't have that much whole grain in our diet. Most of us
And a
don't.
lot
So.
of the whole grains have added sugar too.
Depends on the whole grain product. Now, I get a whole grain bun at 85 degrees centigrade bakery that has mostly the natural whole grain in it and has raisins and nuts in it. So you get some extra carb from the raisins, but it's pretty healthy. That's what I had for breakfast this morning with some almonds and a whole wheat bun from 85 degrees centigrade.
Thank you. Okay, Cassie?
I got here a little late because of a traffic
Yeah.
issue. But, did you tell them about the fad right now with people feeding their infants butter?
No, I did not.
There's a fad right now because of the brain growth. Some people realize that their kids who had trouble sleeping slept better if they fed them butter.
I looked that up and that's not true actually. There's no scientific evidence that that's true. That's a fad going around now.
It's true, I said
Yeah.
it's a fad.
Yeah, people have the mistaken belief that if you feed your kids butter at bedtime, but the problem with that
And it's
is
straight up butter.
when they did studies during the Korean War and the Vietnam War, autopsies on soldiers that died at 18, 19, 20 years old, many of them had fatty streaks in their arteries already from eating too much saturated fat as children. So if you start giving kids butter, you're going to promote atherosclerosis beginning at a young age, which is not a good thing. Doug?
Yeah, I would recommend to anyone who's really interested in nutrition science, in the latest research in nutrition science, to subscribe to the Nutrition Action newsletter. It's produced by,
Harvard School of Public Health.
no, it's actually by the
CSPI.
Center for Science. It's the Center for Science
Oh,
and the
right,
Public
yeah,
Interest,
yeah.
which was formed, the Center for Science and the Public Interest that publishes the Nutrition Action newsletter, which
Yeah.
is monthly, was formed in the early 70s, and it's, at its root, it's a lobbying organization. But the newsletter does a fantastic job of several things. It always gives a feature story on vision or on diabetes or cancer or something, and it gives you the latest science, peer-reviewed science. It always gives you who did the research if you want to dig into that more. And it also gives you lots of little bite-sized, no pun intended, updates on research, and it always concludes with the bottom line. Here's kind of what might be true, here's what's really not true, here's the bottom line for your day-to-day.
Yeah, it's really an excellent source. We get that, and each time they usually have, here's the real story on different fast foods and breakfast cereals, and they'll cover like the good and bad about nutritionally about all the products that are available in the grocery store and when you go to a restaurant.
They'll do a profile in each issue, the best yogurts, the best
Yeah.
cereals, the best bread.
Yeah, it's good advice.
And the worst ones too.
Yeah, Mike, all right, is Mike next? Who's next?
Melinda and then Mike.
Melinda.
Oh, I was going to say, when you're talking about snacking on fats versus sugars, that I think the reason that people are having so much trouble is because when they eat something sweet, they can't stop eating it. It isn't like they can eat one cookie and be happy. They have to have 3 cookies or 4 cookies. And with fat, you don't tend to do that quite as much because it's more satisfying when you eat it. That's just an observation
Yeah.
that I.
A lot of those processed foods have a lot of fat in them besides the sugar and fat.
I mean, you take a donut.
But the fat doesn't slow you down fast enough. You keep getting engrossed by the sweetness and you keep eating. And
Right.
so you're getting too much carb and too much fat.
Yeah.
So remember that commercial, I can't believe I ate the whole thing? Remember that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
But I think that portion control is just a big problem.
Yep, it is. Portion control is a huge problem.
Okay, Mike.
Yeah, well, I'll emphasize that with, everybody knows that, like Girl Scout Thin Mints, one certain size is one of those tubes, right? Or the other one is that, according to Kraft Macaroni and Cheese, I'm a family of 4. But what I really wanted to say was, average lifespan is a really, really interesting thing, and there's a lot of things that really affect it. And one of the things that really is weird, if you map it out, if you look at it spatially, one of the things, if you want to live longer, get the hell out of the South, all right? Because what we think about as the classic South has much shorter lifespans than the rest of the country. Now, then you have to ask yourself, well, why is it? Is it the environment? Is it social things? Is it lifestyle things? But there's a great spatial correlation between lifespan and geographic location.
Yeah, and then the higher minority populations tend to not live as long for various reasons, including poor access to health care. And so the U.S. is more ethnically diverse than most other countries. That's part of the reason we have a short lifespan, because we have a lot of people who, for various reasons, don't live as long as a subset of our population, including Southerners and Southern blacks, in particular, compared to Northern blacks, don't live as long. So it's complicated.
My hand's up. I wanted to go aside. My son, third son, who wanted to be an Air Force pilot, he took the test. He was way up there for intelligence. They did the blood work. They said, we're going to have to repeat it. Something is wrong. And my son said, what? I am not, how should we say this? My mother, we called her Mrs. Granola. She fed us healthy food. And so if you're saying my cholesterol is so low, it's unbelievably low compared to all the other enrollees, it's probably accurate. You really don't need to redo it. Okay, we got Noel.
Noel, and then Isabel has her.
Tony and then Isabel.
Okay, when I grew up, or at least through part of my life, I always thought you should have a banana a day, and a banana in the morning is a very convenient, because if you're taking your pills and your omega-3, etc., etc. But both myself and my wife have been notified after some blood tests that our potassium is high. Normal, but on the high end. And I've been warned that, ew, that's not too healthy, which kind of contravenes the whole understanding of eating a banana to, maintain your potassium level. Could you comment on that?
Yeah. First of all, the content of bananas is mostly sugar and potassium. And so the potassium is good for heart health in general, unless you have mild kidney disease and you can't eliminate the extra potassium very well. So our kidneys are built basically to hang on to potassium hang on to sodium and get rid of potassium. Because in the environment we grew up in, we ate more fresh fruits and stuff and had plenty of potassium in hunter-gatherer societies. So nowadays we don't need the extra potassium, but some people don't get enough who don't eat fresh fruits. So moderation again is good. Bananas are fine if you don't have a calorie problem and you don't have a weight problem. But if you get the potassium and you get all these extra calories too, it can be a problem. It's like drinking orange juice. Orange juice is great for potassium, but a lot of calories in that one serving of fruit juice. So, and a lot of sugar in particular. And that the fructose that's in orange juice is actually worse than the table sugar, sucrose, and worse than the high fructose corn syrup. It's sweeter and it's more making people more likely to reinforce and drink too much of it. So fruits are healthy in general, but fresh fruits, because you're getting mostly water in an orange. You get a little bit of potassium, a little bit of sugar, but a lot of water. But if you eat orange juice, it's concentrated, so you get a lot more of both in there. So you just got to be careful with potassium. It can be good, or too much of it can be bad and can kill you. And if you want to commit suicide, just inject a certain amount of potassium and your heart will stop right away and you will die. So, moderation.
We have Tony, Isabel, Melinda, Doug, and Cassie.
So,
Okay.
your talk is excellent, thank you, Michael. Another thing made me think, because there's the Academy Awards tonight, it made me think about movies, because I like old movies from like the 30s. And then Tara and I lived in France for many years. I worked there. In fact, I worked too much to the point where they didn't realize or forgot I was American.
And your question is?
They said, one of the French ladies said, "Oh, she has an American ass." And I said, "What?" Because they're criticizing a lady. "Oh, her body shape." And I or somebody said, "No, it's their genes." And this French lady who was one of the managers, she held up her knife and fork. She said, "Yeah, the genes." And then you think, we're European, our DNA is coming from not American Indians, but Europe. And yet you look at the movies here, look at the movies from Europe, or the actresses, and you can see a tremendous difference in geographic location and also time. American actors from like the 30s don't look anything body type.
Yeah, it's lifestyle, activity level mostly. The genes are kind of similar, but yeah.
Isabel.
I was actually just wanted to tell you, you mentioned about your son, like, with the cholesterol and stuff. Like with me in my family, high cholesterol runs. Like I have high cholesterol. And that's actually mainly why I said about the fats, because I was cut off mainly of the animal, trans fats, all of that. So I mean, like also, like you would like to, to research, like in your family, because if your family have high cholesterol, because even though you have a good diet, you could have high cholesterol.
Yeah, exactly. The main determinants of cholesterol are family history, genetics. You can have a body that makes too much cholesterol out of the saturated fat that you have in your diet, even if you don't have very much in your diet. And then the other determinant is the saturated fat intake. So it's partly genes and it's partly diet. But you're right, you can have high cholesterol even with a vegetarian diet. I had a medical student who was at LSU in Shreveport. He was 24 years old, and his father was a dairy farmer who died at 48 from a heart attack. And he inherited familial hypercholesterolemia from his high cholesterol from his father, and his total cholesterol was 300, which is very high. And his LDL was like above 200, which is very high, the bad cholesterol. So he has been taking cholesterol medicine ever since I prescribed it for him when he was a first-year medical student, and he's now doing great now in his I guess he's in his 60s now. But he would have died young probably if he hadn't gotten his high cholesterol treated with medication, because he was eating a healthy diet already and exercising and running like 4 or 5 miles 3 or 4 times a week. So he was doing all he could with lifestyle, but his genes were just driving his cholesterol way too high and putting him at risk for early heart attack and stroke.
What are your thoughts on taking a magnesium supplement?
Magnesium supplements are generally not necessary if you have a balanced diet, because you're probably getting enough magnesium in your diet. It would be an unusual dietary pattern that would not have enough magnesium. It's not particularly detrimental to take some supplemental magnesium. You're probably not going to have any adverse effects from it, but it's probably going to be a waste of money, basically. Most supplements are just a waste of money. They're not harmful, they're just not particularly helpful, and you're wasting your money. But there's a huge industry, as you know, selling lots and lots of stuff that we think, and if you go to Costco or Sam's, they've got rows and rows of supplements that, and I take some supplements, but there's some scientific evidence for each of the ones. I take glucosamine for joint health, some evidence that that's helpful. I take coenzyme Q10 because there's some evidence that helps improve mitochondrial health. So I'm taking some supplements for which there seems to be a decent scientific basis for. My dad took, interestingly, in the 1950s, my dad was taking wheat germ and bone meal, and he was taking supplements. He smoked, but he lived to 83 despite smoking. I think partly because he took some nutritional supplements to help his body do better. And he's also a bricklayer. It's a very active lifestyle. So, but
Cassie.
Piggybacking on Noel and the potassium level, is it normal? I mean, for older adults to need more or less potassium, relating to the kidneys and kidney function as we age?
okay, if you get older and your kidneys don't age faster than the rest of your body, then your kidney function is still good, like mine is, then you don't need any different potassium than you did. If you develop mild kidney disease, you need less potassium because your body can't get rid of the extra as well. I can't think of a situation in which you would need more potassium as you got older. So your need will either stay the same or drop some, depending on the status of your kidney function.
I was just gonna say, so where I grew up, and I go back to visit every once in a while, there's an old diner that is there, and it's been in the same family since, I think, the mid-30s, early 30s, something like that. And so there's some really physical evidence of, how we used to eat. And one of the things is that, like, so the booths in that diner have never been redone. I mean, they've probably been recovered and such, but anyway, so a booth that was supposed to sit 4 people in 1935, right? No way in hell that's happening today. And so now, they, over the years, I think have pretty much maintained the same size of coffee cup, which to us mostly now would look like it was out of a child's size, something for children. But I was asking the other one time, and he said, oh yeah, I still have some of the old plates from back in the 30s, and he brought one out and everything, and it was a lot smaller than what we would think of as a normal plate size for going to diner and getting something to eat.
Yeah, that's one of the big problems with the American obesity epidemic. Is the plates are too big, the servings are too big. If you when Cash and I go to a restaurant, we each order a meal that feeds us another meal or two past that meal. Very often, because we get way too much of whatever it is. And so we also stretch our food dollar by, we get Chinese food from a place that we like, and we get basically 2 or 3 meals each, usually 3 meals each out of this one big serving. It's supposed to serve 2 people. So we're getting basically serving for 6 out of the serving for 2. So that's, we got a burger someplace yesterday, the 49er thing down here on the highway on the way back to where we go. We split a chicken sandwich, which was enough for 2 people, easily. In fact, Cassie got 2 meals out of her half of the chicken sandwich. So basically, it was enough for kind of 4 people in that one chicken sandwich.
Okay, Mary and then Mike again.
I'm just gonna
Okay.
add something to the conversation.
Doug had his hand up too.
To the
Karen?
conversation about.
Who's up?
Okay, no,
Mary?
I just wanted to second Mike. I recently cleaned out the attic, been here for, since '86. And there were lots of boxes of complete sets of china from assorted Asian relatives. And I opened them and I thought, where's the dinner plates? I thought their dinner plates were like our luncheon plates. And so just to
Yeah.
verify, I was astonished at how small they were.
Who's next?
Okay, Mary Forkey.
I was gonna contribute something to the talk about the high cholesterol, because my husband at one point had extremely high cholesterol and triglycerides and didn't want to take statins. So we did some research into the more natural approach to it and spoke to a nutritionist at Whole Foods who recommended if he was willing to go on what she called a mono diet for 2 months, he could lower his cholesterol without drugs. And the recommendation was to eat nothing but oatmeal, whether it's oatmeal or in the form of groats, which is the unpressed oatmeal. And don't put anything on it for seasoning, no sugar, no butter, no salt, nothing. Mono meant one item. I did it with him so that he wasn't doing it alone and we weren't preparing 2 different things, but mostly for emotional support. His blood was retested at the end of 2 months and he had gone down from almost 500 cholesterol and 700 triglycerides into the normal range. After that time, he would eat oatmeal once or twice a week for breakfast. And he did put toppings on it, and his levels never increased again.
Well, that's unusual, because it usually goes right back up to where it was when you resume the way you were eating before.
He messed up.
You can't count on that
by
working.
eating the oatmeal twice a week after that, I guess.
And most people aren't willing to go 2 months eating one
It was
thing.
not a pleasant thing.
Yeah.
It was doable, and it was more pleasant, I think, than taking.
Yeah, that's not gonna fix it most of the time.
Anyway.
I found when people tried it, and we went right back up to where they were when they went back to eating. They tried different things that'll work temporarily like that. You don't want a temporary fix, you want a permanent, long-term, healthier eating pattern and or appropriate medication.
Okay, we're closing out with Mike and then. Okay, Doug.
Yeah, just a couple things. It's really critical to understand that the food industry, the American food industry, which is now trying to foist all the crap that they make overseas and ruin the rest of the world's health, they absolutely have laboratories where they are hard at work trying to make food addictive. Sugar, fat, salt. And their goal is to sell food. They don't care about your health or my health. Their goal is to sell more food, sell more sugary drinks, sell more crackers and cookies and chips. Has nothing to do with your health. So you have to really be vigilant and recognize that if you pick up a box of something and it has more than 2 or 3 or 7 ingredients, and you're now reading ingredients you've never even heard of or that you don't have in your shelf at home, it's probably not good for you.
Yeah.
And there are entire aisles in the grocery store, most of them I would posit, that you shouldn't buy anything on those aisles.
Yep, that's probably true. There are actually, within the food industry, there are a few good actors that are trying to sell minimal ingredient healthy food, but they are vastly outweighed by the vast numbers of companies that are trying to sell you crap that tastes good and is going to make you gain weight and have long-term health
Goal is
problems.
to sell more food.